This is John Gollinger. John is the democracy advocate at Public Citizen. He investigates the role of money in politics and is an advocate for greater government transparency and accountability. He used to be a prosecutor in San Francisco's white collar crime division and led a lot of investigations into public corruption, which, as I mentioned earlier, really comes in handy in the times we're living in right now. So he co authored a report that found more than half of the publicly identified corporate donors to Donald Trump's $400 million White House ballroom project have received new or expanded federal contracts worth more than $50 billion during the first 6 months of this second Trump term. The report found that many of the companies, I think just as importantly, have seen federal enforcement actions against them paused or dropped. Can you tell us a little bit about Public Citizen? You all have been around for a long time and, of course, have been led by some very well-known people. But tell us a little bit about what you all do.
Sure. Public Citizen is really sort of one of the original public interest advocacy groups, sort of the grassroots version of corporate lobbyists in Washington. And, 50 plus years ago, it was clear even at that time that corporations in this country who wanted to not just use the strength of their product to make a reasonable profit, but actually use juice politics by paying lobbyists for influence, were slanting government decisions in a way that hurt regular Americans, cost people money, made unsafe products and cars, and did other damage to corrode democracy. So Public Citizen was formed in 1972. Is that right? Really is primarily a DC-based public interest advocacy group. We originally worked primarily on bread and butter consumer issues, so product safety, stopping you being ripped off, giving you somewhere to complain if something's wrong. And then I've expanded in the 50 years since to cover a lot of healthcare work. Early in the tenure of Public Citizen became one of the real pioneers in making sure people knew whether the prescription drugs were going to save their lives or kill them, and also
Is
which ones were ripping you off. And then now we
is
do a lot of
this
things.
Yeah, is this Fred Wertheimer? Is that
No,
right?
no. Fred Wertheimer started was the original at
Common
Common
Cause,
Cause.
right?
But you're right that that was the same family in the 70s, which is when I was born. As and sort of
Stop bragging, John.
the birth of the birth of people power, if you will, and that
Right.
was and it was all very ragtag from what I understand. Obviously, things became much more professional, but also combination of this work and grassroots organizing, which is where I started in California on the ground, knocking on doors, raising money, raising hell, and using that power to push for public interest work.
Well, this second Trump administration, I imagine, has kept you all very busy. And your new report is called Ballroom Billions: Trump Ballroom Donors Devour Taxpayer Dollars. Before we dig into the findings, set the scene for us. What is it that with this White House ballroom project that made you want to pull this particular thread? What got you all interested in this?
No, I think that's a great question. As sort of you touched on in your previous interview and in a lot of the work you've done, the Trump administration from day one has really engaged in undue influence, demolishing checks and balances, overreaching authoritarianism. So there's been a ton to do. We were busy from days after the election. I got to work writing my very first basically anti-corruption report about lobbyists being hired in high positions in the government. But when the East Wing was demolished, something became an issue about corruption because we already knew that the idea with building this ballroom was going to be to bring in corporations and others with interests to give the president money. But when they demolished the East Wing in front of all of our eyes, it became an issue that every American could relate to. I mean, it destroyed something that we all love, and in a way that was shocking, with no real plan to build something new. And so it merged sort of the emotional, visual component of that with pay-to-play politics that are actually, as we're looking at in this report, costing people money or getting government to stop enforcing the law in a way that's designed to help companies make more money rather than ensure their products are safe or that people get fair pricing. So it's sort of those things that got us and me working on the ballroom, sort of watchdogging from day one.
Yeah.
and it's only gotten worse. So that was October of 2025. So that was what, 7, 8 months ago now. But it's only gotten worse, and part of it is President Trump's obsession. And as everyone who's watched any news about this knows that this ballroom sort of apparently to him represents a way to get what he wants, and shake down people who want something from government or from him, and do it in a way that serves really just his own interests. That's
Yeah,
unfortunate,
and this obviously, John, was started when this was going to be privately funded
right?
by, private citizens, individuals, corporations, because now it's shifted into getting the government, right, and taxpayer dollars to pay directly for this ballroom, correct?
It's a little bit of both, actually. So they've kind of gone back and forth, and that's, I mean, underlying, a lot of the concerns and the corruption and the deals in the Trump administration has been lack of transparency, doing things in the dead of night, ignoring laws that are on the books to at least give the citizens and independent watchdogs, Congress, the ability to see what the White House is doing, but they've sort of hidden everything behind closed doors. So
And and additionally, sorry to interrupt, John,
yeah,
but
no, please.
additionally, getting rid of all the inspectors general for all these different agencies. So there used to be a watchdog that was responsible for this kind of corruption or malfeasance, whatever you want to call it, that was happening. But they fired all of them.
They fired all of them, and for the most part, replaced them with sort of yes people and cronies, and that's
Right.
unfortunate. So at the moment, we are all primarily the inspectors general. Everyone watching this has the ability to do one thing. We did in the course of watchdogging the ballroom was I filed a Freedom of Information Act request, a FOIA, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and everyone on this call can do ask the government to disclose a document that is a public record, and you can do it through their website, you can do it through an email or a letter. I did that looking for the sort of financial arrangement behind the ballroom, the contract, which I was told existed. I asked for that right after the East Wing was demolished. The government, the Park Service, which sort of is facilitating the project, blew me off for months, and then our lawyers, because Public Citizen has an incredibly robust litigation arm, they sued and won, on behalf of American people for years, took this case, sued, and the judge agreed with us and made them give me the contract, which is right here. And so this is an example. We've learned a lot from just that one action. There's so much more people can do. But I will say, just to the money, the original idea we understood from the president was, as you said, private, patriots, I think he called them, would give money. We didn't know who it was until we pushed out some disclosure of the donors. The news media has reported some more, but we found out in this contract that the White House said that donors are allowed to be anonymous. So we actually don't know who is really fully paying for this. And then a few weeks ago, as you noted, sort of out of the blue, the president asked the Republican senators to put $1 billion in sort of a streamlined budget ask to try to jam that through, in part because of the money, but actually in part because the project is facing a very difficult court battle because a judge ruled that the president proceeded with this ballroom project without Congress's approval in violation of the law. And that may very soon make its way to the Supreme Court. So the president was trying to sort of short circuit the courts by getting Congress, by giving him some money to implicitly say, therefore, we support the ballroom project. That all fell
Right.
apart. There was massive public pushback. They've dropped that for now. We remain vigilant. So now we're back to sort of watchdogging the private money, which is coming. If they were patriots, they would actually say how much they gave. Almost none of these donors have been willing to say how much they gave.
But
And
you found out.
we found out some things. There's
You
still more to
found out
find out.
some things, not everything.
Yep,
Tell us some of the things you found out, John.
sure.
And
So we,
thank you, by the way. Thank you for your work, because without it, people wouldn't know what the hell was going on.
yeah, that's true. Well, you're welcome. And there's a lot more people. The good news is there are quite a few more people like me doing this kind of work every day. So there's hope. As I mentioned, there are also real things for regular people to do. Um, I will. So back to our report. I mean,
Yeah,
we
and
looked.
we won't let you go without finding out what regular people like us can do.
Please, please. So we actually looked at this initially in November. So a few weeks after the East Wing was demolished, we did an initial report that we called Banquet of Greed. So there we looked at what we knew then, which is the companies that had been identified as donors and how much they've gotten in government contracts, and then how much they'd spent in politics to influence the government, and how many enforcement actions had been dropped. But what we did with this report was look at, since they gave that money, what did they get? Now, so a caveat is we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. So we know from public figures that the 27 companies that have been disclosed as having given some money to the ballroom have gotten, as you said, a total of $50 billion in either new contracts. So that's contracts to build things or do things from the government since we did our first report, since the East Wing was demolished. And some of those contracts are from the last year that were increased. So we don't know, but we want to know whether those were the result of deals, or if not deals, whether they were a result of wink, wink, and nod, nod. You give money to the ballroom, we'll bump you to the front of the line. That's the kind of thing Congress should be right now holding hearings to investigate. And we hope the next Congress will, if this one won't. And we could go down the line. Some of those companies, Lockheed Martin, Booz Allen, Palantir, Microsoft, Amazon, a lot of them are major names people know. Some of them would have gotten the money anyway, probably. But the problem here is that the American people see cash being given to companies who then get far more cash coming back to them, and that's our
Right.
money. So it just destroys the trust in the way a fair, competitive contract process is supposed to work. Yeah, and it makes it
I,
harder for us to believe that it's working the way it should be.
I guess my question is, so like, sorry, so that's weird interference. Anyway, my question is like what you were saying, like, how do you determine if it was a pay to play situation that these people got bigger government contracts or new government contracts because they made donations? Because I mean, that seems hard to determine, no?
Yeah. Well, so let me circle back to the experience you mentioned. I spent 3 years in San Francisco before I came to Public Citizen prosecuting public corruption. And San Francisco is a small place in size, but a big place, unfortunately, in corruption. In part because there's a lot of money. There's billions and billions of dollars there. It's wealthy land. So the kinds of cases I investigated were not that different. We investigated some contract pay to play, and the way we uncovered it was talking to people, hearing from people, and connecting dots. And now law enforcement, with probable cause, can go actually get a search warrant, or can file a subpoena. And I will just say, we don't have that power here at Public Citizen, but bank records, emails, text messages, conversations exist. And then, as I mentioned, people eventually a lot of times talk. So, it's also possible everything was done above board and it just looks and smells rotten. But as I said earlier, that is also damaging. So what should have occurred is, if the president wanted to build this thing, he should have done it the right way in public through Congress, get it approved, make his case. If it's necessary, I'm sure he could have persuaded his allies in Congress to approve it, and then raise the money in the light of day so that everyone knew who gave, everyone knew what they wanted, and everyone was sure that no one got anything from it. And I'll just add, Senator Elizabeth Warren and Congressman Garcia have a bill called the Stop Ballroom Bribery Act that we support, that would just sort of make this kind of corruption, or even the appearance of corruption, impossible forevermore. So we urge people to support that bill.
So, over half of the corporate ballroom donors, 14 out of 27, have received new or increased government contracts over the last 6 months, as I mentioned, totaling over $50 billion. Altogether, over two-thirds of corporate ballroom donors, 19 out of 27, received government contracts over the last 5.5 years, totaling $338 billion. And so I want to just name some of these corporate donors, because why the hell not, right, John? So we have Altria Group, which is tobacco, Amazon, Apple. Hold on, I just want to make sure these are. I'm sorry.
This
I'm
is
going
the
to do.
phone.
Sorry. I want to do the ones that have gotten new or increased
Yep.
contracts first. Sorry, I jumped ahead. Sorry, everyone. So Lockheed Martin, as you mentioned, Booz Allen Hamilton, Palantir, Parsons, which is an engineering/defense company,
Yep.
Microsoft, Amazon, Hewlett Packard, Caterpillar, T-Mobile, Google, Next Era Energy, Comcast, Vantiv, which is healthcare, Union Pacific Railroad. And so tell us, I mean, we don't have to go number crunching through all of these, but in general, what did you see happen for these corporate donors?
Yeah, I mean, we saw that they got a ton more money than they put in. I will say that some of them, in addition to getting the contracts, two of the ones on the list you just gave, they got both contracts and they got something or want something from the government, from the federal enforcement perspective. So both Next Era Energy, which is a massive energy provider in Florida on the East Coast, has recently announced that they want to merge with another huge energy company, Dominion, and that merger would make effectively a monopoly on energy in the terrain that they control. And so that kind of merger is supposed to be under U.S. law and longtime precedent that Devin Barrett knows really well, subject to strict scrutiny by the Department of Justice antitrust review if companies want to merge in a way that would make consumers have less choices and potentially allow them to jack up their prices. So in addition to getting contracts to do in their, well, I'd have to look at what those contracts were, but in their case, I presume they had to do with, providing energy or providing transportation. They want mergers to blow through with, I'm sure, little or no scrutiny, and we're deeply concerned that that's going to occur. There are some other companies on the list because over half the total number of companies received or are hoping to receive special treatment from the government in terms of investigations into worker safety and defective products and ripoffs in the marketplace that they hope, or in some cases, have had dropped since the Trump
And
administration started. And that's a
yeah,
concern.
and I'm going to read some of those names too. Everyone, if you're just joining us, this is John Gollinger. John is the democracy advocate of Public Citizen at Public Citizen, basically issued a report that all these corporate donors basically either got much bigger contracts, new contracts, a lot. It was sort of a quid pro quo, I guess, situation that is raising a lot of eyebrows, to say the least. And other donors basically had sort of investigations or regulatory issues, right? That
Yep.
magically disappeared when they donated to this ballroom, essentially, right, John? And
Yeah,
so those are Altria Group, which is tobacco, Amazon, Apple, BlackRock, Booz Allen Hamilton, Caterpillar, Coinbase, which is a crypto company, Comcast, my old employer, yuck, uh, Extremity Care Medical Products, Google, Hard Rock International, HP, which I'm assuming is Hewlett Packard. Am I right? That's
it's
Hewlett.
analogous. It's not actually
Okay.
it's a different company, but
Oh,
similar.
sorry,
Yeah,
Hewlett Packard. I take that back. HP, Lockheed Martin, Meta Platforms, Micron Technology, Microsoft, Next Era Energy, NVIDIA, Palantir, Parsons, Reynolds American Tobacco, Ripple Crypto, Susquehanna International Group Finance. I think they're in DC, aren't they? Tether America, T-Mobile, Union Pacific Railroad, and Vantiv, which is also healthcare.
yeah.
Did they get contracts and kind of an ease of regulatory oversight? What? Because some of these I see numbers by their names.
Which I
The
have
the
to.
ones I just named.
Yeah,
Oh,
some,
are are
some
these
did.
both contracts? Or these? Um,
Table 3 on page 4 is those are so that the ones that have something in the third column that says federal enforcement faced, those are the ones of the donors that had mergers or have
oh,
had them. Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Okay,
that's
I'm
okay.
really screwing this
It's,
up, everyone.
yeah.
What I just read were additional donors that got received government contracts.
I think you actually just read all the donors.
Yes,
Um,
all the
so
donors.
yeah, so the subset here. Why don't I read it? The ones that had federal enforcement actions they faced were Amazon. So, for example, worker safety investigation um, of alleging unfair labor practices. So that is, according to our report, that's pending as far as we know, but they want it dropped. Um, Apple, BlackRock, Caterpillar, Coinbase. So Coinbase is a crypto company. So that's one where, along with the other crypto company on the list, uh, the the charges against them for unregistered securities and securities violations were dismissed outright,
Hmm.
cold. And so that basically allows them to keep doing what they're doing without any oversight. Google as well. I'll just side note, not HP, but HP is Hewlett Packard. Excuse me. You're right.
Okay.
There's another company called HPI that's different. There's another antitrust
Okay.
problem. So continuing on, Lockheed Martin has some federal enforcement that they're facing, and they're a ballroom donor. Meta, Microsoft, Next Era Energy, which we talked about, Nvidia, which is a massive chip maker, and now one of the most valuable companies in the world since the Trump administration began. Ripple, which is the other big crypto company on this list, and a major ballroom donor and a major player now in campaign, political, and election spending. Um, Susquehanna International Group, or SIG, which has a huge stake in TikTok, and ByteDance, which owns TikTok, and is based in Pennsylvania.
Oh.
The owner, primary owner, T-Mobile, Tether America, which is also crypto, and Union Pacific Railroad. So though the ones I just named are the piece of our report where some of them also have contracts, but that's the list where it's the federal enforcement actions that their agenda, at least, was to get those dropped or get those looked at favorably. Some of them had them dropped, others they're still pending. But again, it casts a pall over whether, if they get what they want, it was because they gave money or it was for some other reason. And that shouldn't be the case. They should find a way to give money if they want to support a civic project without it having the appearance, if not the reality, of pay to play.
So basically, what is first of all, why aren't there laws against this? This sounds like just downright, bribery, right? And B, what is the next step for your team? And
Yep.
C, real quickly, what can the average American do about this? Because it's outrageous.
Yep. Those three fantastic questions. The first, why isn't it already against the law? Because I would hazard a guess that I know most Americans think the way the Ballroom Project, has destroyed the East Wing and been pushed through in a way that's not going to benefit most people, and has this potential corruption problem is wrong. But bribery, according to this Supreme Court where we are now, federal bribery is incredibly hard to prove. So we discussed this briefly before, but you actually now would have to have proof, evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to present to a jury that there was not just money and a benefit, but there was an agreement beforehand to provide that specific money for that specific benefit. So you'd have to have a wiretap, you'd have to have a witness flipping, even that it's going to have to be very narrow. And the Supreme Court just said bribery basically is going to be tough to prove. But there are other laws either on the books or proposed. Various states, California has some stronger laws where government officials shouldn't be able to take money from folks with business before them, period, because it looks bad and may be bad. But the federal government doesn't have those laws. There are some other things. But basically, the next Congress, we hope, will prioritize public corruption and cracking down on this and other similar schemes as one of the first orders of business in the new year. That's certainly Public Citizens' hope, and we're working hard to make that happen every day. I will say to real people, of course, we hope you'll support our organization. You can find us online, and there's other good groups. There are things people can do every day. So look for a public record that you think is important to get out there that no one is seeing. File a FOIA request. You can reach out to groups like us to find out how. And certainly, take action. Make sure you vote. And feel free to call up one of these companies and yell at them if you want and say, what, if they wanted to give to the ballroom, at least they should say how much they gave. Like, only one company on this list has disclosed that. The others have been asked by various members of Congress, and they've all said, we don't have to tell you, so we're not going to. Lastly, I would just say that they moved this money through a charity called the Trust for the National Mall, and that's been a really troubling part of this particular scheme. And I looked at something similar in my work in San Francisco, where a nonprofit charity was used to funnel money which is done in a way that is both tax exempt. So we basically subsidize it, and nonprofit charities don't have to disclose their donors to the public. So it looks like they did this in significant part to keep it out of the public view. I think that's an abuse of the tax code. I know members of Congress, some at least, want that to be the subject of investigation. And I think it's something that should trouble us all. So people can certainly make their voices heard on that subject as well.
Well, John Gollinger, again, thank you so much for talking to us. Do you feel like the report is getting a lot of attention?
I do. I think I think this issue people understand. I mean, there are very few Americans that pay attention at all to politics that don't know what the White House Ballroom Project is, and that it is controversial. I do think it's important to continue to do this kind of work because shining a light on the facts, not just the rhetoric, allows people to make up their own minds about whether you think this is wrong or not. And it also hopefully allows us to move the ball forward because we don't want to just complain. We want to be action oriented and we want to push till we get some results.